Good morning. This is Pastor Jason of Kona Faith Center with a word for today. And the word for today is wrath. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness. Wrath is commonly translated anger, and while I think anger is probably an accurate translation of this word to a degree, think about anger without sin. Jesus writes, the anger of men never produces the righteousness of God. We have absolutely no context for anger without sin. In fact, we have absolutely no context for life without sin. We can think we understand what it will be like in heaven with a complete absence of sin, with a complete absence of the effects of sin, but we don't have a clue. I can only imagine. In the same way, we can think about anger without sin, but it is completely beyond our ability to comprehend. And yet the wrath of God is a common biblical theme. Commentators say that God's wrath is his divine displeasure, his indignation, his divine retribution. But the word translated wrath in Romans 1 is God's utter abhorrence to sin, but it also means a longing mixed with grief for those who live in it. See, the problem is that God must judge sin. God cannot tolerate sin because if it does, it diminishes righteousness. Righteousness stands against and is defined by contrast with what is wrong. The real problem with the knowledge of good and evil is that now man cannot fully appreciate and fully experience good because he has the experience of evil and the effects of evil. So the easiest way to understand God's wrath for me is with a working definition that God's wrath is his divine judgment on evil. God's wrath is both now and not yet. Interesting biblical concept, now and not yet. God's present wrath represents his final withdrawal from those who do not respond to his love. So there's definitely consequences in the here and now for evil, right? And Romans 1 lists a whole bunch of them that are just mind-boggling. But there will be an eternal consequence for evil that is irrevocable. God does judge evil. If God tolerates evil, God's not righteous. If God tolerates evil, in fact, he cannot be God by definition. There's both the here and now component to the wrath of, or the judgment of God, and the then, or the eternal component to the wrath or the judgment of God. Now, Jesus came to save us from the wrath or the judgment of God, and we choose by our actions every day whether or not we want to be under the wrath or the judgment of God. So Paul lists a few simple ways to help us make the right choices. Glorify him. How do we glorify him? We take on his character and nature. Be thankful. I think that this is a subject that needs to be expanded tremendously. Think correctly by putting on the mind of Christ. Pursue the light. Pursue truth. Worship God only. Keep God in focus. Grow in the knowledge of God. Be humble. Be righteous. Think on righteous, virtuous things. Be discerning. Be trustworthy. Be loving. Be forgiving. Be merciful. Practice righteousness and encourage righteousness and righteousness practice in others. So, the word for today is wrath. God bless. Check in tomorrow.